Hi, my name is Colin Fain. I'm the CEO of Agronometrics. And what I want to do in this episode is take into context a previous video that we've made where we predicted that um, the peak of Peru's production would reach the US market around week 48. And it's week 48. So we want to see how that prediction played out. And a part of that prediction was talking about how prices would, as a result, crash. So we also want to look at that and take it into account. If you want to see the original video, it's going to be a link to this. It's going to be in the description. And it's also freely available in the stories section of the website. It's freely available to everybody. So everybody can go and look at it and see how right our predictions were. So we're going to start looking at, we're going to hide this. Okay, there we go. So we're going to start looking at the US market data made available by the USDA and AMS. The Agricultural Marketing Service is our source for this. So they make available prices and volume. So we're going to start off with volume. And what we can see is that Peru has grown, and hasn't stopped growing all the way to week 48, which is the data that we're looking at here. We can look at what the last couple of years of data offered to us, and we can see that our forecast was actually pretty correct. We estimated between 4 and 5 weeks, 5 weeks to be more conservative, for the peak to reach the US market. And I believe that week 48 is the peak of Peruvian production. They're the biggest participants in the market as of yet. And this is the point at which imports from 2023 has finally surpassed imports from 2022. So we can look at this by clicking on the Open Alive version of this chart here. And what we want to do is isolate Peru. So this is kind of the same exercise that we did last year. I guess I kind of played with this one already. But you can toggle these off. And really what we want to see is how this year did compared to last year. And so these are imports into the US from Peru. And you can see how they've grown. And as previously stated, I believe this is going to be the peak. So what have prices done? So we're going to scroll up in the market update and compare this season to the last couple seasons, isolate the last 2 years, and we can see that prices have fallen. In the previous video, I predicted that prices would fall to kind of the same level that they were at last year. That has not quite played out. But if we expand on this chart, actually, I think I did it here. And we can go to look at, in the data navigation tool, what that data looks like. We can then compare by history by clicking on that, or compare by history in the compare by dropdown. It gives us this tool. And we want to clean this one up a bit. We can see that, yes, the prices are falling, not quite there, but we can look a bit deeper. We can actually compare this data by day. So we can do that in the period, and we want to look at the daily values. Click on that, and oh no, that's a different thing. That's the next thing. All right, we can just do it here. So we're going to look at the daily values and see that those continue to fall as of yet. Today is Thursday, so we have the data available for Wednesday. That's day 304 of the year. And prices have fallen from a high of 15, which is when the previous video was made. And right now we're at $7.54. Considering that the volumes have already exceeded last year's volume, unless inventories are being filled to protect the price, which is likely what's happening, this volume will continue to come down. And we can look at the Peruvian data to kind of get a better idea as to what. As to how Peru will develop, we're going to go back to a chart. So Peru, we're estimating at its peak. What will the rest of Peruvian season look like? Will it follow last year's? Will it kind of overlap and then fall off? So we can look at the Peruvian export data and kind of get that perspective. And we're going to do that by comparing these two screens. So here we got Peruvian data. We can open this in a new chart, put the data in weekly, and then compare by history. So these are all of Peruvian exports. And actually, more specifically, we can compare it to what the US exports are. So we're going to go down to United States, and that's going to come up here. And then we're going to be able to compare one-to-one what is reported as an export from Peru, and then what is arriving in the US. And so we can see the point of inflection, I suppose, was week 43, which was kind of when we made the previous video. And since then, the exports have been falling off in line with what we saw last year. They're actually a bit above it. So I would say it is most likely that this is the high point. It took about 5 weeks to get here. And the rest of the season will kind of fall off in line with what we saw last year. Peru will continue to be the largest provider in the market for a little bit. Chile and Mexico are next up. And we can see this in last year's data. So we're going to compare 78 weeks. This gets pulled up, and we want to see the interplay between Chile, Mexico, and Peru, and how that fills the void coming into January. So we're right about here, give or take. So yeah, 4th of December, like beginning of December. So we can see that Chile will be about another 4 weeks before they come online, and Mexico is slowly growing. Peru is this year likely to be at more or less the same level that it was at last year. And if we go back to the market updates and we look at the entire chart, through the end of the year, I would say Peru is going to be a bit at the same level. And if we look at the compare by history for Mexico, which I've kind of already set aside. So this is Mexico volumes by history. We can kind of see how their season this year has evolved compared to the previous year. And Mexico is coming in a bit short from last year. This is at least the beginning of the season. Mexico is broken up into a lot of producing regions. As this comes in, it will be very interesting to see if they're able to increase their volumes to match up to the previous year, or if they will continue to be short. If they're continue to be short, that might actually balance out with Peru to get an equal level to what we were able to see last year. Chile, it's still too early to really tell. They're reporting about 13% lower than what they did last year, but we still kind of have to wait for the market to play out and see how that looks on exports, and by consequence, how that will play out on imports. But in the next 4 weeks, we're not expecting particularly large volumes from Chile. So my prediction kind of maintains that market prices will maybe be a bit above, taking into account a increase in demand, which we tend to see year over year. But if the volumes are somewhat similar to last year, or if they're a bit below, then that would also be another reason why the pricing could be above. or slightly above. And I think that's a bit of a modification from the forecast that was made last time. There are other factors that go into it. One big one is what the split between program and spot market is. Here we're only looking at spot market pricing, but my guess would be that the prices are not going to continue to rise. They should kind of continue to fall in line with what we saw previous years. I hope that video was informative, and I hope the previous video was informative. And I also hope that if you have a need to forecast what's going on in the market, understand how volumes and production from different parts of the world will eventually affect markets such as the US or any other market in the world that we track, that this information is useful for you. Thank you very much. And I need to think of a good sign off. I'll work on that. I'll try to think of something for the next video. All right. That's going to be it for this one.